NBA free agency kicks off with a bang. There's a new super team out in Philly as Paul George joins the Sixers. Can Joel Embiid finally make a conference finals? Plus, Klay Thompson is gone from Golden State. He splashes down in Dallas. What does that mean for the Mavericks? The Thunder beef up. The Celtics are being potentially sold. We've got NBA free agency winners and losers. It's a jam-packed Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have winded down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, co-host of Locked On Nuggets, joined by David Ramil of Locked On Heat. We're going to give you the whole lowdown on the first day of NBA free agency. There's so much to get to. We're going to try and jam this into our usual 34-minute episode. So no more dilly-dally. Let's get right to it. David, Paul George heads east. I had heard that Paul George really did not want to. He wanted to stay on the West Coast. He's been there. He is a West Coast guy. That's where he has wanted to. But instead, Daryl Morey gets his guy. The Sixers land Paul George, a max 4-year deal for George, as Daryl Morey comes in huge with a gigantic signing, $212 million. His time with the Clippers is up. His time with the Sixers begins. They re-sign Tyrese Maxey to a huge extension. They re-signed, they keep Kelly Oubre on a very affordable deal. They have signed Eric Gordon. They're still filling out the rest of the roster, but it's clear that the core is going to be Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George. What was your reaction to the Sixers getting Paul George?
Mixed. At the same time as I think it seems like it's going to be a good fit, I do have concerns. 34, and given his health issues over the past few seasons that have made him unreliable, and I think that's fair. It just seems like such a good fit, though, between Maxey and Embiid. You get the right kind of complementary player, a guy who can play defense at a high level, who can spread the floor so well, who can still attack the rim and put some pressure on there. And they're filling out the rest of the roster. So I guess if I had to give a final answer regarding my take on it, I'd say it's mostly a positive one. But there is a healthy dash of concern there regarding whether or not you've got two players now in Embiid and Paul George who had major health issues over the course of their career. And so, it could work out really, really well. And it could also become incredibly disastrous.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I love the basketball fit just because George is a really good connector. There was a criticism today from somebody I saw in Sixers Twitter of like, Paul George is not a good passer. That's absurd. He's a great passer. He's not like an elite, ball dominant heliocentric guy, but he's a really smart passer, especially at sequences where he comes off of pin downs, catches, and then finds guys cutting. So he's going to keep the ball moving. It's going to help in the non-Embiid minutes, which is where they got destroyed last year, right? It's like Embiid had to stay on the floor. He couldn't rest for a single second. And obviously, like, that wear and tear is not good for him. Now, you could be even more cautious with playing Embiid in certain situations. Like, if you're facing one of these teams that's like borderline, you might be able to get through with just playing Tyrese Maxey and Paul George at home and be able to get through that, because George is still going to have nights when he puts in 30. Maxey obviously elevating himself to the stats that he has. Like, Maxey's only going to continue to get better, and that really helps, I think, here. The defensive side, I think, is also great. Paul George is a really great defender. So, like, the basketball stuff here, I really like. I think this is going to be a very good fit, especially with Nick Nurse and how he likes to play. There's just going to be a lot of opportunities for high-quality looks, I think, for Paul George. My concern is that they gave Paul George 4 years, the max, to 12 at age 34. Like, he's going to be 38 when this deal ends. And if PG drops off precipitously between 34 and 36, this deal is going to be an albatross by the end of it. Now, you go all in because you're trying to get Joel Embiid to the finals. Like, that's the goal, is get Joel Embiid to the finals. And this goal helps in the minutes where Joel Embiid is on the floor with Paul George. it helps in the minutes in which Joel Embiid's not on the floor. You're right that the injury issues are an issue. PG, the last since 2020, 48 games, 54 games, 31 games, 56 games. And then last year he did play 74. So he was pretty available last season.
Yeah.
I tend to look at a lot of his injury history, and it's pretty like scattered. If you look at the actual list, it's like random freak stuff. Like when he breaks his leg in preparing for the Olympics back when he's, Indy, like, what are you going to do? It's not like Kawhi where he has one issue that keeps having problems. He doesn't have one problem that keeps popping up. And that to me, I think is encouraging, but they also, again, 34 years old. I think there's probably some issues there. Jackson Gatlin talked last night with our host from Locked On Clippers, and you can catch that show and get their reaction to the end of the Paul George era. I've been surprised that Clippers fans are pretty much like good riddance, are like, oh, well, because for me, like I look at it and I just go, look, you have all these stories of Kawhi Leonard basically not talking to anybody, not communicating anything, flying in when he wants to, practicing when he wants to. Your leadership structure now is James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. Yikes. Like that to me is absolutely terrifying. Like where's the backbone of your team? Because PG did fill in a lot of that stuff there. There's criticism of how he like acted last year. I don't blame him because the Clippers very clearly were like, oh, we love you, Kawhi. Here's all the money in the world. We love you, Kawhi. It's okay that you're never going to be able to play. And then with PG, they're like, we'll see. And so I don't blame him for being a little checked out last year. What's kind of your reaction? How far down do you think the Clippers fall? Because they still do have James Harden and Kawhi Leonard and a pretty talented roster.
I think it all depends on Kawhi's health. Like, I mean, they have a high ceiling, but I think, again, given his injury history, I mean, they re-signed Derrick Jones Jr., or they signed rather Derrick Jones Jr. I think they've made some other changes as well. Keeping track of it hasn't been quite so easy. Oh, Nick Batum returns to the Clippers now. He plays alongside James Harden, who he was traded for. So I think that's a positive signing. I think Batum's still a high-level role player at this stage in his career. So I'm curious to see how it works out there. You got Ty Lue. So I don't think they're going to drop off significantly. I just don't think you can put them in that same tier as a title contender at this stage unless they make a major improvement between now and the start of the season, given everything else like that. Harden is a good player still, and obviously Kawhi still a very, very good player when he's engaged and healthy. Those two things don't always manifest at the right time for Clippers fans, so I could see why they might not be considered a top level contender just right now. But what do you see this roster? You see the Clippers roster. What's the area of need that they need most? Is it shooting? Is it wing defense? What was it that they're lacking right now?
I mean, for me, it's more ephemeral stuff. It's stuff like leadership and team identity. Like,
what I'm not getting that. Kyle Lowry, is that the ansser?
No. Like the thing is, like, they don't have a direction, and I get it because they're going into the last year of kind of this era. I think, even though they just re-signed Harden and Kawhi, I think that probably there's going to be some major shifts next year if they don't win a championship, and they're moving into the new building, and they want to keep big names on the marquee for the new building. All right, cool. But I think you need to have some sort of idea of what your team is. Like, how do you define yourself? And your team can't be like, we have Kawhi. That's not enough, honestly, at this point, on top of all the issues with his availability. So yeah, I've got some concerns. We'll see what else happens with the Clippers going forward. We'll keep you updated here on Locked On NBA. Up next, how about Klay Thompson splashing down in Dallas? The Big Three era in Golden State is done, but Luka Doncic gets a heck of a pickup as the Mavericks continue a dynamite offseason. We'll talk about that and more up next here on Locked On NBA. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. And that's why I love betting the WNBA in the summer, because it's absolutely an awesome sport. And it's a great market to be able to get in on. There's so many angles you can kind of take right now, especially given, how about this? Angel resets the record for the most consecutive double-doubles in WNBA history and does it as a rookie. And she's still a very big dog to be rookie of the year behind Caitlin Clark, which, hey, favorite for a reason. But I think it's really interesting to kind of see how that's shaping up. You can also get in on the daily stuff. I've got a lot of plays here on the Tuesday slate. Excited for it. Love the Lynx versus the Liberty plus 5.5. That the market keeps disrespecting the Liberty. I think they're going to win this game outright. So I like the Liberty versus I like the Lynx rather versus the Liberty in tonight's matchup. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Go out, head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us, making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Tuesday. Matt Moore and David Ramil with you on a Tuesday, recapping the free agency madness of Monday, which honestly, most of the big stuff is done. We'll talk about some of the stuff that's kind of left over in the last segment, but got a lot out of the way on Tuesday. So we'll talk about all that on today's show as we continue. Let's head on over to Klay Thompson. Okay. Lots of drama with Klay Thompson going into Sunday night after free agency opens. It's Mavericks, it's Lakers, it's Mavericks, it's Lakers. It's not going to be Warriors. All these teams back and forth. And finally, it comes out. It's going to be the Dallas Mavericks as Klay Thompson joins the defending Western Conference champions with a really, honestly, reasonable deal. Like, that to me is like the big takeaway here. 3-year, $50 million deal via Woj of ESPN. It's going to wind up being a sign and trade likely as we're recording this. Like, they're still figuring out like the absolute details. It sounds like Josh Green is going to the Charlotte Hornets. And then the big key here is the Warriors don't want any players back. They don't want anything. They just picks. Just picks. That's all they want. Why? Because they're cutting salary. We'll get to the Warriors in a second. Look, Klay Thompson is still a great shooter most games. Most games he's really good. There are nights where he's really not. The defense is the big slide off here. And I do think that going from Derrick Jones Jr. and what he brought them in the playoffs last year to Klay Thompson and Najee Marshall is kind of a downgrade. So the identity that the Mavericks had last year is going to be different. What they're banking on is the rim protection will still be there with Lively and Gafford. They've still got Kyrie and Luka cooking on the perimeter. And now they've got another knockdown shooter they can trust in Klay Thompson to add into that. I just don't know where Klay Thompson is at physically. Like the drop off last year was pretty precipitous and the numbers kind of back that up. However, still Klay Thompson. You got Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, and Luka Doncic. That seems good. What was your reaction to the Klay Thompson news, David?
Surprising and disappointed. You know, just as somebody who's loved the game for a long time and followed the NBA for a while, even before I started covering it, it's just to see a historic group like the Warriors breaking up. But I know we'll save that conversation. In terms of him joining the Mavericks, you know, I think it's a potentially good fit. My focus is that I think he's going to look at this season and be pissed off and engaged in a way that we haven't seen in a while. Maybe that's in a while. Like, obviously coming back from injury was a huge motivator for him. And it was enough to the degree where he was a significant part of their title run a couple seasons ago. And I think we're going to see some version of that, even at this stage in his career. I think he's going to be like, you know what? New town, new opportunity. My career isn't just tied to Steph. It's not just about being a Golden State Warrior. I'm going to be Hall of Fame shooter Klay goddamn Thompson, and I'm going to put on a goddamn show alongside Luka Doncic. So I think that's going to drive him. It's years 2 and 3 of this deal where I think we're going to get a significantly lesser version. But if it doesn't matter if you're able to secure a championship this season. So I'm looking at this as basically one really good year of Klay, followed by 2 really bad seasons of Klay Thompson, where Mavericks fans kind of go, damn, I wish we hadn't added Klay Thompson to the roster, unless they get a championship out of it in the upcoming season.
I think, again, I just worry a little bit about the identity of the Mavericks, but look, this has been a dynamite offseason for them. Like, Najee Marshall is a great pickup for them, especially on the deal that they got. Klay Thompson is a great pickup. Like, they objectively got better, and they moved out some players I think were kind of worrisome for them in terms of Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Like, they moved off of guys that maybe they couldn't trust and got guys that they trust more. I think that's a real positive. For the Warriors, here's what I don't get. Why hand out the Draymond Green $100 million contract last year if this is where you're going? Like, why the brazenness of this, of just basically being like, we're desperate to get under the luxury tax to just save money. Like, you still have Steph Curry, and Steph fell off last year a little bit under the strain, but like the year before, Steph was like a serious MVP candidate. And now we're just like going to give up on the twilight of Steph Curry's career. And you could say like, well, Klay wasn't going to help him enough because of, what he's kind of shown in terms of the slide. Okay. I also just think the entire way this has kind of gone about, like Bob Myers leaving to me was like, that was a very big omen of what was to come. Like he saw the writing on the wall, and there's all these kind of indications that Klay does not appreciate how this whole thing went down. Like he feels, like you mentioned, pretty disrespected and is going to be out for blood next season to prove it. Those games are going to be very personal for him versus Golden State. Yeah. And I just don't understand the decisions that were made between like, we're going to go all in on Draymond with all of the Draymond problems that come with Draymond. And then with Klay Thompson, we're going to treat him like this. Like that disparity to me is very confusing.
Was there the intention that they would be able to move off Draymond's contract a lot sooner, possibly to the Lakers, to have him kind of play alongside LeBron James there? Because I think that's a possibility, and maybe you know about it more than I would. But I think they would probably have felt more comfortable having traded Draymond up to this point, and they just couldn't get anything done for whatever reason.
This is per The Athletic. Thompson felt that Golden State's interest in a reunion was, quote, disingenuous, and that he never, quote, felt reciprocated love from management about his firm place in the franchise's plans. It's, look, if you're going to go down the whole light years route, and look, they won 4 championships. They did win 4 titles. I get it. Yep. But I'm also just curious, like, okay, then you still are at this half measure because you're still trying to compete with Steph Curry and Draymond Green, but now it's Jonathan Kuminga and whoever else. Warriors and Clippers took a big tumble down here in the Western Conference that's already really tough. So I'm just going to be very curious to see what happens for here on out. And I think it's a bummer that this is how it was never probably going to end with all 3 of them retiring at the same time. That's just not how this stuff works, right? Yeah. Tony Parker was a Charlotte Hornet, right? Like these things happen, but it's still a bummer that this is how it goes down and that there's some bad blood between Klay Thompson and the Warriors. Where there's not bad blood is in Oklahoma City, where all the vibes are extremely positive. The Thunder pick up Isaiah Hartenstein to address pretty much all their remaining weaknesses. Like this is a 0 downturn deal that they got Hartenstein on. They sign Hartenstein. It's a 3-year deal with the last year non-guaranteed, which to me is like very significant that this is essentially a 2-year huge money deal that they were able to get Hartenstein on, gets him away from the Knicks. He is the one of the best offensive rebounding centers in the entire NBA. It's a 3-year, $87 million deal. And I understand people that are like, he averaged like 6 points per game. What are we doing? It's that he does all the things that the Thunder needed. The Thunder had all this cap space to spend, and free agents aren't exactly going to be clamoring over themselves to join Oklahoma City. So they go out and they address the specific need that they had after they got Alex Caruso, and they do it in a way in which they give up no draft picks. They don't have to trade anything for him. They just sign him into space, and they sign him on a deal that means that when the time comes and they have to pay Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren and these guys, they can move on from that contract. Sam Presti is Dr. Doom. Like, this is ridiculous work. I talked to an executive last night that was just livid when he was hearing that Hartenstein was likely to happen. When he was like, they get Caruso. This is a direct quote. They got Caruso for nothing, and they're just going to get Hartenstein with cap space, and they still have room to maneuver. How? Like, that was the word, that the tone that the executive was using. And so to me, honestly, like, I look at this and I'm just like, okay, so let me get this straight. Like, on the bench unit, because like the starters are going to be like Shea, Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, Chet Holmgren, and probably Hartenstein. If they don't want to start Hartenstein and they want to start Chet at 5, they can play Alex Caruso at 2 guard, move J-Dub to the 3, and Dort at the 4. They're going to have the option of having Alex Caruso and Cason Wallace off the bench. They re-sign Isaiah Joe, 42% shooter, and Aaron Wiggins, one of the best plus-minus players in the league. Oh, yeah, and their young guys are all getting better because last year they had the youngest roster in the league, and their best player finished second in MVP. Good God. injury is the only thing that is in the way of the Thunder making another run to the top of the Western Conference, David.
You got to love it. It's a great move. Makes a lot of sense. He's young and he plays with energy. Like, he does a lot of things well. Like, I understand the sticker shock a little bit from NBA fans, but he was a significant component of helping keep the Knicks afloat after they had injuries to Randall and Mitchell Robinson and everything else like that. And he just provided a hell of a spark, and he was a nice part of what they made them such an interesting and fun team this season. And I think he's going to join another interesting and fun team next year too, and he's going to help contribute at a high level. And it's just, I mean, the quote from the executive you talked to is perfect. Like, it's just a masterful move. It's smart, gets a need addressed at a reasonable price. You're not costing yourself anything really by throwing that money at Hartenstein, and you're getting a great player out of it. I love it. It's a great move. What's not to like about it?
I think they're the number one team in the West. That's just me, because it's like, what was their big problem last year? It's like, oh, you could get offensive rebounds over them.
Them or Minnesota right now, given what Minnesota's gone through this offseason.
It's tough with Dallas, because it's like Dallas made the finals.
Fair enough.
Dallas made the finals and got better. I want to give them credit. What's interesting here is, like, what about Denver? Like, that's the thing here is, like, Denver's sliding, and we'll see whether or not how this works out, because again, you don't win championships in July. That's not how it works. We've seen a lot of these really great moves on paper not work out, but as far as like smart moves, it doesn't get much smarter than what Oklahoma City has done this offseason. Up next, we're going to go over the winners and losers from free agency, plus the defending champions. The entire franchise is on the block. We'll talk about that and more up next on Locked On NBA. Final segment here on Locked On NBA on a Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. We're going to try and get through the remaining news that we have to get to, which there's just so much to get through here quickly. Let's start here. The Boston Celtics are on the block, unbelievably. On the same day that they agreed to a max 5-year deal with a total of $313 million for Jason Tatum, who, by the way, did not win finals MVP and has never won MVP. Great player. Just like, as an aside, I was just like reading that number and being like, Jason Tatum signs a 5-year deal for well over $250 million. That's crazy, and yet completely unexpected, like completely expected, and exactly what you would expect right now. With where they're at. Derek White also gets a 4-year, $126 million extension, according to Adrian Wojnarowski. But after all that, now, with all those bills coming due, the Boston Celtics are going to be on the table, because their ownership group has confirmed in a press release that they have plans to sell their shares in the team. Quote, the controlling family of the ownership group, after considerable thought and internal discussion, has decided to sell the team for estate and family planning considerations. The managing board of the ownership group expects to sell majority interest in 2024 or early 2025, with the balance closing in 2028, and expects Wyc Grousbeck to remain as the governor of the team until the second closing in 2028. I mean, to me, this reads as like they won the title. They racked up all this money, and now they see the second repeater tax looming on the horizon and all these bills coming due, and it's a good time to go ahead and get out. If the Golden State Warriors and Joe Lacob are ducking the tax with this fervent approach after winning a title, hey, when's the price going to be higher than the defending champion? So get out while the getting's good, I guess, is the plan from the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, it looks bad, right? But it's a business decision, and these are businessmen making these kind of choices, and so it kind of aligns with their overall strategy and approach to things like that. I wonder, and maybe you could speak to this more than I could. Did they not make enough money off the finals run where they could kind of justify the incredible expense that you're going to be incurring over the next couple of seasons, and that's why you decide to get out while you still can? I don't know if that's kind of written into this, or it was just a matter of like, you know what, we've got this great team. We made the push to go all in for a title. We succeeded, but we knew at some point there was going to be a huge sticker price for this, and it's going to cost us more than we'd like to pay. So we're going to get out now while the getting's good. I mean, you're right. There's no better time to sell this team than now. It's just it goes against like the whole good vibes of the thing. You win banner 18, you're bringing one for the team, etc. You've got this great group together. You lock in everybody. You're like, by the way, this is somebody else's problem. It's not going to be mine anymore. I'm out of here. So whoever wants to pay for it, step right up. It's your team now.
The 2025-2026 Boston Celtics payroll and luxury tax, that's after Al Horford's deal is over, by the way, is set to exceed $400 million once they fill out the roster. Tax rates are set to increase in deeper levels that season, while the Celtics are also set to enter the repeater tax. I'll do anything to win, but after I've won, I'm out. You can have that. You can deal with the financial, and more importantly, you can deal with the backlash from the fans when you desperately try and get that team down, because whoever takes over that team is likely going to be like, we got to cut some payroll here. I just paid $6 billion or whatever for the Boston Celtics, $8 billion, whatever it's going to be. We gotta cut down some of the salary here. Let's do winners. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Is it going to be the most expensive franchise in NBA history? Like by a wide margin, right?
Until the Lakers sell, yeah. Until the Lakers sell.
So. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
All right. Let's do some winners and losers from NBA free agency. I will go first. I'll do a loser, and that's got to be the Los Angeles Lakers here.
Damn it.
So D'Angelo Russell opts in, and the hope was that they'd be able to figure out something with Russell opting in, that they could make a move immediately to be able to move Russell as part of a deal to get some sort of marquee free agent. They were in on Klay Thompson, and it was reportedly down to them and the Mavericks. Who knows about these numbers? I will just say that the numbers I heard for the Lakers side offer were higher than what he wound up taking with the Dallas Mavericks. And it wouldn't shock me because he's got a better chance of winning a title and, to let's be honest, rubbing it in the Warriors' face with the Dallas Mavericks. At that said, right, now the Lakers have missed out on another free agent. They don't make any move for DeJounte Murray at the deadline. DeJounte Murray's now with the Pels. Can't go do that deal. I guess you can maybe go try and get the Trae Young deal if the Hawks are amenable to it, but that doesn't sound like that's happening. You're running out of clutch guys around the league to go pressure to get. I guess Zach LaVine's still there. That might be doable, right? That nobody wants. Teams are star free agents, especially a star free agent who loves the ocean, chose Dallas over you. And now there's word coming out in the late afternoon that following the failure to make a substantial upgrade in their roster, LeBron James is like, I would have given you a discount if you'd signed somebody.
Yeah.
But you didn't. So now I'm going to take the max. Not surprised. Don't blame LeBron. Like, he was like very upfront about this. Hey, I'll give you a break if we can actually get somebody to help us win a title. Okay, you didn't do that. All right, now I want the money. The money's going somewhere. You're not just getting a break to get a break. Right. So to me, the Lakers have to be considered a loser here, David.
Yeah, I had them on my list as well. So that was the team that I was looking at, because it's, again, the inability to kind of build around LeBron and AD and everything else like that. So there's still, I guess, the possibility of them making some improvement later on in the offseason. But for now, it looks like they're in a real tough spot. I know this is somewhat homerish, so I'm looking at a loser. I'm going to say the Miami Heat, and I think I'm just speaking for a lot of fans of the team, for a team that's been a play-in tournament team for the past 2 seasons, that has to deal with the age of Jimmy Butler and whether or not he's going to be fully engaged for a full season and fully available, to not be able to add a player other than Kevin Love for 2 more years, and to lose DeLon Wright. Not that that's a significant move maybe, but it doesn't help. It's a tough spot for Miami. I don't think Miami fans understood exactly what was going to happen this offseason. I think after being spoiled in 2010, they have had unrealistic expectations almost every season following that. Their hope is that, Pat Riley can make things happen, and all of a sudden you're going to be able to sign free agent after free agent. Well, guess what? They didn't have any possibility. They didn't have any option of doing that. They were not going to be making any changes, and yet here they are now. Jimmy has agreed to come back to the team for at least 1 more year, and then he'll probably opt out and cash in. And then who knows what's going to happen. Bam, the guy signed his extension. He'll be with the team for a while. They're going to lose Haywood Highsmith. They're going to lose Caleb Martin, although there's some possibility Highsmith might return. I'm not sure, depending on what price they might be able to talk him into signing for. But you're looking at a team that had to make some kind of splash to start off the offseason, to win back for the fans that are growing increasingly loud and frustrated. And guess what? Their only move is, let's bring back Kevin Love. So not exactly helping them.
I kind of wonder if Jimmy's actually going to retire with the Heat, because it feels like what's actually going to happen is Jimmy's going to go through this year. He's going to have another probably injury, not plagued, but pretty banged up, season. Watch some great tennis. And then
we just talked about that. He could be great. What if he uses this year to say, you know what? I'm still Jimmy goddamn Butler.
Yeah.
I'm going to play at a high level, and he's fully healthy or whatever. And he wants, being an all NBA type player, and maybe even pushing Miami into a deep playoff run. Does he get the bag from Miami? Probably at that point in time.
Yeah, but what if he did? My thing is, I think it's more likely he doesn't. The age kind of catches up with him, and then he's just kind of like, yeah, no, there's no market. Like, nobody's really hankering to pay me into my 40s, and I'll just go ahead and stay with Miami. So that'd be an interesting one. I think a winner outside of OKC, if we're going to kind of look around at I think the Thunder and the Mavericks are the two teams that won the most, even with the Sixers getting the biggest name on the deal. I actually kind of lean a little bit towards I want to see what the Bucks or the Cavaliers do. They got to get Donovan Mitchell back. If they can get Donovan Mitchell back, they're going to be the big winner here. One of the big winners is actually the Bulls. So the Patrick Williams deal was a lot of money for a young player, and that one was kind of like a head scratcher, especially with the player option. But they got Jalen Smith. DeMar DeRozan's apparently going to walk. I'm very curious, by the way, to see whether he winds up with the Lakers or the Clippers. I think both those teams are going to be at the top of his list. I don't know how the Clippers would make it work, but just putting it out there that he's probably going to want a California team. The Bulls did the thing that I didn't think that they would. They're going young. This is what the fans have wanted forever. It's just tear this thing down and actually commit to it. If they can move Levine and DeRozan walks, even if they got to sit through a final year of Nikola Vucevic and try and move him in season, that's fine. At least you got a direction. At least you got young guys. And yes, trading Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey was a disaster. There's no question. The inability to get picks in that deal was an absolute loss. But getting Jalen Smith, going in on Patrick Williams, and not re-signing DeMar DeRozan as soon as you could, that's a win, because at least the Bulls got a little bit of a direction here. What's a winner for you?
The Orlando Magic, I think, just recently announced that Goga Bitadze is re-signing with the team. They added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They're not going to lose any kind of significantly player to that roster. It's a young team. I lived near Orlando, and I covered that team for a number of years, or at least covered the NBA in general through Orlando. And so I saw the constant upheaval. I saw Aaron Gordon be basically a useless player for a long time because he just couldn't figure out his role on the team that seemed to keep changing every once in a while. A new coach every other season. It was a disaster there. Now they finally have an identity. They've got some consistency. I really like the addition of KCP, although there's some questions there where you and I were talking about beforehand. He's a good player. Maybe it impacts Denver more than it does Orlando, but that's a conversation for another time. But overall, I think, they're making some positive moves, and they keep the core together. They keep that team that was, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly good, but exceeded expectations and had a really good season. And I think being able to lock that in today's NBA is a really important step in the right direction. So I think of them as a big winner as well.
So I'll actually put them losers strong. I like the KCP deal, right? KCP is a very good player. With Orlando, it's very much you have to you have to pay a tax. You're one of those teams like OKC and Detroit. You've got to pay a tax for spending money on anybody, because nobody wants to go play for your franchise until you're back into contention, right? And so you have to pay extra. I thought the KCP deal was actually really good value. It was less than actually what I thought it might have ended up being. So I thought they got a really good deal on KCP. My only thing is when I look at it, I'm like, all right, Suggs, KCP, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. Word just came out from Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports. They're also working on an extension deal for Jonathan Isaac. So it sounds like they're going to keep Goga and Isaac, and they're going to deal Wendell Carter Jr. If they get some offensive boost for that, that could be very good. However, the offense here still looks really miserable. This was a bottom 10 offense last season, and the Magic are going to have to figure that out. I think you can say that Suggs and Paolo and Franz will all get better. Those guys are young and they will get better. Like, I believe Paolo Banchero is going to be able to resist the dark side that is becoming Carmelo Anthony and instead move towards the light, which is becoming like a more physical Tracy McGrady. But there's still an efficiency gap there. And so they're going to have to be able to make up for that in various ways. They do need more offense. And I don't know where that fits in the roster with KCP, and they weren't able to pull off any other deals. So if you're looking at it and you're like, okay, Suggs, KCP, Wagner, Banchero, does KCP instantly make that unit into the teens? I don't know. Even as good as KCP is as a spot up shooter. So I have some concerns there for the Magic. I wouldn't say that they're a loser, just that like would have been nice to see maybe more is more of, and hey, we still have days to go here. Before we get out of here, because we are running long, I do want to ask about real quickly, Lauri Markkanen. Jazz are taking offers. My understanding is it's going to take a Godfather, oh my God, they did what kind of offer to get Lauri Markkanen out of Utah. But Golden State's apparently interested. If the Warriors wind up with Lauri Markkanen, does that reshape the entire context of how we look at their offseason?
I don't think we can answer that. Again, I mean, what is it they're going to have to give up in order to acquire Markkanen? Is it that just that acquisition alone doesn't move the needle per se, like unless you see what they have to give up in order to acquire him? And I don't know if it changes. Does it keep the window open for Steph a little while longer? I don't know that you can make that guarantee either, given how teams around the Western Conference have improved. So my answer, no.
All right, it's going to do it for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Tune in tomorrow. John Corrales and Jake Madison will have you covered on the latest in the NBA free agency news. We'll be here with you all week covering all the news and trades as the NBA offseason wraps up. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.